Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of HR at the Table. This is not your typical webinar series. This is monthly where we sit down. It's like a podcast style discussion with some of the greatest HR, talent acquisition professionals in the country and actually the globe. So, we are so grateful for our speaker that we have today. But before I introduce her, just a few housekeeping items to cover. So, first things first, because I get this question a lot. Don't worry, we're recording. I know my hands can only type or write so fast. Yours probably are the same. Don't worry, we're recording. So just be present, be in the moment, take it all in. You can also then share the recording with your colleague, with your boss, with your friend, whoever. We want this to be an HR at the Table community at the end of the day. So don't worry, we are recording. Another kind of housekeeping item, questions. We have a great speaker here. I've got questions to ask her, and we'll dive into those later, but she also wants to hear from you. So if you have questions, we want to make sure this episode and all of our HR at the Table episodes are worthwhile to you. So ask questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can. If we can't get through them all, don't worry, we've got contact information and we'll share that later as well. And then the last thing I just want to share before we continue to dive in is at the end of today's episode, there will be a little survey. Please give us feedback. It takes like, I don't know, 30 seconds. There's like 4 questions. Give us feedback. Let us know what you thought of this episode. If there's other topics you want to cover, we're all ears and we would very much appreciate that. Now we've got quite the group coming in. I love that the chat is already so engaged with where you're watching from. Let us know if this is your first HR at the Table episode, if you've been to a few, because as I've mentioned, this is a series, so we have a monthly episode every month. And we are lucky that in the month of September, we actually get 2 episodes. So this is the first one of the month. All right. So, to kind of kick things off, I want to just give a shout out to today's episode sponsors, iCIMS. iCIMS is a great partner of Verified First. Some of you are probably clients, and that's how you ended up here today. And we are so thankful that they're sponsoring today's episode and sponsoring just good conversation and giving back to you all. So thank you, ISIMS, for sponsoring, and we are so excited to keep this conversation going today. So we are unpacking how AI readiness is becoming a core part of your employer brand. So bringing in AI, bringing in being ready for AI and employer branding all into one conversation. I don't know how we're gonna do it in an hour, but we're gonna do our best. And if we need a part 2 and part 3, we'll talk about that after. But we are so fortunate to be joined here by Lisa Ann. Lisa, it's great to have you join us, and we're so excited to have you on today's episode. Maybe before we jump into things, if you could introduce yourself, share a little bit about what you do and why you're passionate about this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Liv. Very happy to be here. So hi all, I'm Lisa Ann, or usually just LA. I am calling in today from sunny Oakland, California, here in my home office slash craft
I
studio.
love it. I
To
love
get a
it.
little bit of vibe as me as a person. Let's see, like many people in HR, I suspect on this call, HR is my second career. Right. I find there are very few people who say, I want to be in benefits when I grow up. And so a lot of us find it kind of organically later on. So that was definitely my story. I spent the first 10 years in marketing. I helped Apple design the retail store experience, some really fun things like that. Then kind of moved into broader business operations and did 2 general manager roles at small venture firms, tech for good venture firms. And it was kind of like that exposure through business operations to the world of HR that just made me fall in love with it. And so from then on, I honed in on people. I kind of never looked back, and so I've spent the last 10 years doing pretty much everything across a people team, and just have been honored to do that at really great companies like Slack and Airbnb and Pinterest. So now I'm a people chief of staff for forward-thinking chief people officers in tech. And I just wrapped up doing that for 3 years at Asana. Hopefully, we have some great customers here on the call. And that was also where I chaired our company-wide AI council that was really focused on how employees learn, adopt, and feel about AI. So I took
Mm.
the summer off. Now I'm considering where to go do this work next. And so for now, I'm just really excited to be here today as someone who's been deep in this work for the past year. And I know many people on the call today have as well. So I truly hope today's conversation is that I'm not going to have all of the answers. I am hoping to learn from this community as well. So please ask your questions, share your ideas and your perspectives in the chat to make it a richer experience for all of us.
I love that. Thank you, Lisa Ann. And I didn't LA. That I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Um, no, it's so fun hearing, yeah, about your journey. I know we've had some conversations before, but just your journey into HR and the space, but then also the tech side of it, and AI. I'm excited to dive in more and learn from you and our audience today. But I do have to ask, what's your favorite craft? You,
Oh,
yeah,
well, this room's probably going to give it away.
yeah.
I am a sewist and a modern quilter. That's a thing.
Yeah, yeah,
I go to QuiltCon. I mean, it's a whole vibe.
okay. Yes.
So yeah, shout out to our crafty folks out there. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, go sewing.
I love
It's a great, I love math, and it's really just a way to do a lot of fun math. And a really good balance to like the technology side of just being on a computer all day. Then I come home and get
yeah.
on my sewing computer over there.
I love it. I love it. And I see Julie saying knitting. I'm sure there's some other sewists out
Mhm.
there
Yeah,
and
nice, Julie.
so that's great. Well, LA, why don't you share kind of how you got to this space now and kind of here on HR at the table. But before we really jump into our topic, I'd love to just launch a poll question and get our audience kind of everyone kind of engaged and excited. This poll question we ask in all of our HR at the tables, but I'm going to add a little spin to it. We ask this question, we add it to our end of year report, which is only a few months away. So be ready for that. But while everyone's filling this out, maybe also think about how or where you're looking to utilize or implement AI and put that in the chat. So we're adding a little spin onto this question. So answer the poll question, but then in the chat, let us know, are you thinking about AI in your applicant tracking process, in your recruitment process? Is it in onboarding? Um, Really curious just kind of where everyone's at, and then we can really jump into this conversation with kind of a mutual understanding of where everyone's at. I see Shelby said kind of throughout, so
Everywhere.
tech stack. Yeah, I love it. Generating content, applicant tracking, performance management. That's a very
Mhm.
common one. Um, LA, any areas that you've noticed or you've heard a lot of organizations focus on?
I mean, the two that I see the most of, just kind of from going to conferences and like the vendor halls and the products that are out here right now. I mean, the talent acquisition space is just so ripe for just
Yeah,
every part of how that function works. And then coaching. I see a lot in coaching. I think will kind of remains to be seen how that shakes out, like who really has a winning differentiator there. But it's a place a lot of companies are jumping into.
yeah, yeah. And I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit of that, but yeah, I've noticed that as well.
Yeah.
Lot of really great ideas there in the chat for everyone to kind of consider how your colleagues might be considering AI. Um, so to get us started, and make sure we're all on the same understanding and using the same language, When we say employer brand, Ellie, what does that mean? Like, what is employer brand?
Yep. I think of this as how your company is perceived as a place to work. So it kind of answers the question, what do people think and feel about working for your company? A lot of folks might describe it as your reputation, kind of the public persona of your company. And chances are your team is already doing a lot of this kind of on purpose. So you've got your LinkedIn presence. There's also Glassdoor reviews, everything that you put out on your social media, different awards like best places to work, all your recruiting materials. But it's not just everything that you intentionally put out there, right? It's like
Right.
any brand, that story is going to be shaped by your employees, your customers, the press. And so that kind of all becomes part of your employer brand.
Right. Okay. So everything, the whole spectrum
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And how would you say that's connected then to the employee value proposition?
Mm-hmm. I see these words like sometimes get interchanged, but
Yes.
um, I'm most familiar with thinking of EVP as why should someone join and stay at your company? So that is the deal that is made between the company and the employees. What employees are giving, their time, their skills, their energy, and then what they're getting back in return. Total rewards, the culture, the growth opportunities, a sense of purpose, all of that. So it's almost like the product features of the employee experience. And I think that shows up more in things like your career growth pathways, again, your total rewards, maybe it's your DEI commitments or your location flexibility, how meaningful the work is to folks. So you kind of have your employer value proposition as the content and then employer brand as the packaging around that. And the one big asterisk that I will put on that framing is that it's very easy to get just so focused on candidates when we think of employer brand. And certainly it's a big part of talent acquisition's work. But this equally matters to our current employees because if our promise that we're making to folks is out of sync with how that promise is, marketed and talked about externally, and it just doesn't match what's actually happening for employees inside your organization, then people lose trust. And that loss of trust can be quite loud.
Yeah, yeah. I am so glad you added that asterisk in clarification because I'll be honest, I was predominantly thinking candidates and not, current and existing employees. So great clarification there. We have one question from Katrina really quickly that I think before we dive any further would be good to cover. Katrina's wondering when you say AI, are you talking about agentic AI? Are you talking about AI as a tool or as a replacement? Um,
Great
Lisa Ann,
question.
just kind of want to
Yeah.
cover before we dive in further.
So right now, I would say I am more talking about kind of where AI is today, Gen AI, how we're using it as a tool to amplify the talent that's already in our workplace. We are going to chat a little bit about how sometimes that means replacing certain jobs,
Mm.
and less about kind of 5-ish years out, agentic AI, but everything, I mean, that's all what we think is coming, right? So everything we're doing right now is kind of like setting the stage for that. But I would say I'm a little more focused on kind of current state.
Perfect. Great question, Katrina, and really good for us to kind of set the scene as we dive in. So, LA, let's jump into it and talk about the new talent currency. So, it used to be great benefits, a strong mission that were historically kind of those core differentiators for candidates and employees. What are some of the newer, more subtle aspects, we'll say, that talent and people are paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I think mission and benefits absolutely still matter. Those really still have to resonate with any individual's interests, their motivations, their life stage. And some of those are just easier for candidates to be able to assess from the outside.
Yep.
But you're right that in more recent years, other things increasingly matter too. So I'm part of Women Defining AI. It's an amazing learning community for women and non-binary folks in tech. And one of our program leaders in that program, Lauren Irving, I'm going to credit her for this. I love the way she says that a desirable employer today signals we're evolving and we'll bring you along with us. And
Mm,
if I were to sum it up in just one statement, I think she did an incredible job with that. So there's five things that I kind of jotted down as come to mind as for me. And if you have different ones, I'd love to see folks add them in the chat. But one is certainly transparency. And I think of that as how forthcoming and honest your leaders are, whether that's on business performance and challenges, whether that's on your AI strategy. Do employees know what and why behind that strategy in a way that gets them on board?
yeah.
Another is ethics and responsibility. So hopefully it's already a strong part of your culture and operations already, but now that includes AI. And so are you being smart with customer data in this new world? How has your ESG program evolved in an AI era? Flexibility and trust is a third. So this goes far beyond kind of your remote work policy, but how much autonomy employees actually have. Do you design for trust? Do you make it easy for people to do the right thing? Do they feel trusted? And kind of once you set up your AI playing field, do they have full run of it? And that could be what kind of work they're using AI for. It could be which tools. All of that's very company dependent, but do employees feel trusted kind of within the field that you've set up?
Mm,
The fourth one I think on is change. So, do leaders acknowledge uncertainty? And a parallel that I like to kind of think back to is think about the pandemic and how your company responded to that. It was a massive shift in how work happens, and it was urgent, right? It was immediate based on what the moment called for. So, like, what is your pandemic style response to AI? Are you jumping in? Are you being clear with employees? Are you admitting what you don't know? And are you doing that quickly because it's something we're all already experiencing? I think companies that are good at making and communicating decisions and think of change management as more than just comms have a bit of a leg up there and are investing in upskilling employees to kind of meet those new moments. So how a company navigates change, certainly. And then the fifth one, and again, please, if I haven't named what matters for you, jump in. But I think about learning culture. So data has always shown how much employees value learning and growing as a top retention factor, and that is just now especially relevant given the AI era. So framing AI as a tool to amplify human value, genuinely inviting employees in to experiment, all of that signals a culture of growth.
Yeah.
And I'll
Wow.
share a story that another member in my Women Defining AI group shared. She was recently transitioning roles and kind of thinking through what was important to her as she looked for a new employer. And asked herself, does this company provide me with the right AI tools? And does the company allow the AI to access the data I need for my role and ambitions? And I thought that was a really smart question because for her it wasn't just only about hearing like, yeah, we use AI, we're trying it everywhere. She really wanted to know and was savvy enough to ask how the company used AI. And she felt that if kind of certain philosophies and governance wasn't in place, it was a signal to her that her growth and ambition was going to be limited relevant to that role at
Mm,
other companies. So I think it should just be a really powerful that learning culture, I think, weighs even
yeah.
more for folks right now than it might have in the past.
Yeah.
There's
Wow.
also not necessarily a right and a wrong on any of these. It might be clear I have like preferred things, cultures that I might look for, things that I think might work well. But at the end of the day, you need to choose what is best for your business and for your stakeholders. And what matters is whether you deliver on that promise. And it's when those become incongruent that we get that loud fallout, right? We get lawsuits, we get bad press, we get bad customer stories and churn. So it's just really, again, important to think about how your current employees are experiencing all of those factors, the transparency, the change management, your learning culture, because those are stories that get told externally and can really influence candidates as well.
Yeah, yeah, I love that emphasis on how your employees are going to experience that. Are they going to experience your transparency? Are they going to experience still that trust in your change management process? So, it sounds like though AI was woven into all five of those kind of those newer differentiators.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would say, I referenced this earlier, but like the estimated time horizon for AGI is 5 years-ish, right? There's tons of
Yeah.
different estimates out there, but like that's when folks expect we would be creating a machine with human level cognitive ability. It can learn, it can understand, it can perform an intellectual task that a human being could. So savvy employees know that the career choices they make in these next 5 years will have outsized impact on their career opportunities after that. And it kind of feels similar to maybe when we were in our early 20s. Like often the choices we make then can have compound effect,
Yeah.
but probably even more so now. And so candidates and employees are considering, will this company or this job provide me the opportunity to up-level my skills, use AI more in my day-to-day in a way that will make me more compelling to my next company and my next job and earn me those further career opportunities. And I think that's where forward-thinking employees are acutely aware that we will all need those AI skills to continue to stay relevant, and they will migrate to companies that help them gain and showcase those skills.
Yeah, yeah. So if that's the way, savvy candidates are thinking now, what is the risk, for a company that isn't actively shaping, their AI and narrative and brand, let's say?
Yeah. Um, I mean, even if you're not actively shaping it, you are already telling a story, right? Whether that's intentionally designed or not. So the focus is on, is that the story you want? Is it authentic? And is that story effective in bringing the talent that you need for your business into the company and keeping them there? And I think authentic is a really key word, because AI has kind of become this new signal for a company's culture of innovation. And that's really only true when it is authentic. So you have to come back to the why behind your internal AI strategy. Because if you're jumping into AI just because everyone else is, or your AI usage is secretive, or your internal messaging is all about efficiency and cost cutting, that's a very different story, right? That doesn't necessarily signal innovation. And a Sorry if you can hear my senior pup in the background.
Oh,
Still timed.
no worries.
Um, but I think about this with a client that I've recently been working with. I'm doing some consulting with an awesome group called Apply AI, and they really help uh, companies navigate the human side of AI adoption. And one of the companies that we're working with is really focused on AI adoption because innovation is a company value.
Mm,
And they see AI as a proxy for that. It's not the only proxy for innovation, but everything that they are doing to drive adoption has meaning, and it makes sense to employees and candidates because they have an existing history, rhythm, operationalization of being innovative. And so employees know what that effort looks like. They're better prepared for AI to be just the next way that the company delivers on that value.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think the risk is if you are telling a story or trying to tell a story that is inauthentic to your brand, but like what is actually happening inside and your
Reality.
culture and where you are, uh,
Mhm.
and therefore having that not be effective.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We're always telling a story, and I don't want our audience to freak out if, you don't have an approach or are actively shaping kind of that narrative or that brand. We are going to touch on how and kind of where to start there to a certain degree. So I want to talk about AI strategy and building trust with talent. And I think a lot of times when we talk about AI, we come back, thankfully, we come back to the people side of things. And if we don't, then it's a little bit of a problem. But I want to hear from you, LA. What are some of the basic principles that make an AI, strategy or approach people first, right? So really
Mhm.
keeping people top of mind.
It's a great question. We hear a lot about this, right? Human in the loop. The company I just mentioned that's doing work on the human side of adoption. It's really top of mind for folks. So I mean, there are incredible benefits to AI, full stop. Like when I look at what's happening in healthcare, it's just super exciting, for example. But there are also incredible downsides. And especially in kind of how the industry of AI is being built and its risks, we see that in the news. If you haven't read Empire of AI, it's a terrific read, kind of on how all that is happening. And so when we think about people first, it's really going to depend on your own company. But a few things it means to me in light of those bigger light and dark things to hold true about AI is that I think about both how AI can enhance the lives we live at work, and that's this focus on employee adoption, but also lives we are affecting by our work. And so for me, like that's where it gets into, how the industry of AI is being built. I think about inviting stakeholders kind of into that conversation as to where they can not only voice opportunities, but they're also voicing concerns and helping solve for those concerns. And by stakeholders, I definitely mean employees, but also customers, your board, your shareholders, maybe folks with if you have a two-sided marketplace, maybe it's your developer community. It really just depends on kind of who you consider stakeholders in your business. Um, for sure, people first to me means that the goal for kind of why we are investing in AI and all of our actions and messaging around it are to amplify human value and not to replace it. And then lastly, I would say that we're not outsourcing the decisions that should be made by humans, or we're just outsourcing the work to get there, right? Helping us get there
Hmm.
faster and maybe better than we might have on our own, but keeping humans as the decision makers. So
Yeah.
those are just a few things it means to me to be people first on AI. I would love to hear what it means to others. So please jump in the
Yeah.
chat, share your perspective. Hopefully we'll get some good things for folks. And while that's coming in, maybe I will share a story of kind of like the other side of people first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so 7 or 8 years ago, I was head of people at a quantum computing company, and our mission was to build the world's most powerful computer to solve humanity's most important problems, which sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And we talked about that internally, externally, in the press, with candidates. And we talked about it as meaning things like we will bring safer drugs to market faster. We will impact food scarcity with better logistics algorithms. It was really compelling and it was highly motivating. And that felt like a very people first reason for the technology to exist and for these folks to be dedicating their careers to it. Then we appointed a retired U.S. Marine Corps general and former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to the board. If you're not familiar with the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff is the highest ranking military officer in the U.S. Armed Forces, is the principal military advisor to the president, the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council, and the Homeland Security Council. So this person's background was incredibly valuable to our company in terms of understanding the national security aspects of quantum computing. But it created a huge rift for employees who suddenly felt like they were part of the Manhattan Project. They lost confidence in kind of what we were doing and the why, how we were doing it, who was making the decisions on what we were doing, the values, the priorities, the trade-offs behind those. And they just lost confidence that it would be still inherently beneficial to society. So that is an example where we probably lost our people first way, or probably more that we didn't communicate the business value in a way to bring people along with that. So definitely.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a really interesting. example and experience. But I love that you emphasized the technology helping you get there faster. But again, the work of technology getting you there faster, but still people first at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for our audience then, LA, and I believe there's a slide on this, so I'm going to jump to it here in a second, but how can our audience or a company assess where they are now, right? Because you
Mhm.
mentioned like transparency, change management, right? All of that I feel like starts with, well, where are we now
Yeah.
so that, we're telling an authentic story forward.
Yep. Absolutely. So many different great ways to do this. I would say at Asana, we did an AI survey. This was, well over a year ago now, so potentially we would approach it differently now. But we asked specific questions to better understand how employees were adopting it, what was in their way of adopting it. And it wasn't just use cases and tool preferences. It was also their sentiment, because really when you're trying to drive change, like that's what you're working with, right? So there are tons of different frameworks out there that you can adapt. I think we're going to show it right here. Yep. So this is the framework that Asana used. This is publicly available on the internet. If you go to Asana's Work Innovation Lab, tons of great research. I believe this one was developed with Anthropic through some different research. And so we decided, okay, this is how we want to measure our journey to AI maturity, and this is how we help Asana customers measure their journey. And you can just design questions to help get to this. And I believe some of the work there has sample questions as well. But there are so many examples of this. I think Zapier has put out a great one that like there's many examples of frameworks out there. So I would say between leveraging some other stuff that others have put out there, using AI to help come up with the questions to help you figure out what the different milestones mean within your company and along what kind of timeline. You can adapt and even create your own. But having something like this really helps you tell a story to employees of here's where we are, here's where we want to go, and the kind of things that we're going to get to, that we're going to do along the way in service of that advancement.
Yeah, yeah. This is great. And to our audience, again, we're recording, but you could also go to the resources that LA mentioned or take a screenshot, whatever is helpful to kind of get you started. Um, I think this is great. I do want to kind of ask the question on I think there's still a lot of fear or concerns out there in preparing or, yeah, I guess preparing to address some of um, the challenges or the future of AI or AI adoption. So, what are some of the most common fears or concerns, like when you did that survey, that our audience, needs to be prepared to address during AI adoption and through this framework?
Absolutely. I think about these fears kind of in two ways. What is likely universal to many people's experience right now, and
Yeah.
what is going to be unique to you in your company and the moment that you are at. So I think on the most obvious universal side, it's job loss, right? So 2 years ago, our chief people officer at Asana stood on stage and said, AI won't take your job, but someone who's better at using it might. And that was pretty radical at the time. I know many more folks have said it since, but we are well past that, right? So the jobs that we are creating, our expectations of what success looks like in that job is very much changing now as a result of AI. And I think the media is also playing to this fear. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Section. It's a great platform for AI education, but even they have an upcoming webinar called "Will You Lose Your Job to AI?"
Oh,
And so it's beneficial. Fear sells. They will probably sell more classes and trainings as a result of it.
yeah.
I don't know if it's the most empathetic or inspiring approach to
Yeah.
things
I don't
where
know
they're
what that title.
but it's real, right? Like folks will click on that because it does feel real. And I think as HR leaders, we need to understand that job loss hits every level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So it's not just the basics. Certainly folks are going to be concerned on food and shelter and kind of that foundational level of safety, but it's also belonging and esteem. And people really tie identity and self-worth to their work. And so I think when we say job loss, one of the things we really need to think about that meaning is, will I still matter here? And I think
Mm,
that is really at the heart of a lot of employee concerns. So addressing that means that leaders need to show how AI is reshaping jobs rather than just replacing people, and backing that up with education and new opportunities. So with clients, we do a lot of work to kind of suggest that reframe from job loss to job change and expecting change, right? So there will still be jobs, but they will be different. And that means our identity will be different.
mm,
And it can just be really hard for folks to be encouraged to experiment and play with new tools. Like when my whole hierarchy of needs is on the line,
yeah,
right? Like down to who I am. Um, but like that is the reality. And a thing I find extra interesting in this time is that, engineering has historically been untouched in a lot of workforce reductions. But if 90% of code is going to be written by AI in the next 2 years, what do those roles look like? Like, I am sure we will still have engineers, but it might mean something really different. And so, how are we having those conversations now as part of like
yeah,
really change management? And again, understanding that a lot of this is just core to who people are, right? Not
yeah.
just kind of where they clock in and out every day.
Yep, yeah. And when it's core to who they are, that's a whole nother level. That is very, very deep, very sensitive, very real.
Very, yeah.
Yeah.
But then some fears are going to be very specific to your organization. So, to your point, something that we learned at Asana when we surveyed our employees was that employees were really concerned about the environmental impact
Mm,
of AI. And we didn't ask any specific question on this, but it organically came up in so many comments, from the energy and the data centers to the water use. And so they wanted guidance on how to reconcile how is a company that is so at the forefront of
mm,
ESG and responsible, lead workplaces and just all of these incredible things that we were so proud of. How are we reconciling that with the environmental impact of large scale AI adoption? And they wanted guidance on how to think about that. They wanted to know how our company leadership was thinking about that. And so it's just really important to create ways for employees to share their questions, share their concerns, because you will learn things that matter to your organization in this moment that you might not have ever been in your top five or your top 10, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so on that, so with Asana, you guys sent out a survey. Are there other ways, a company can use their AI strategy to build trust with their employers and employees and really remind them of their people first approach so that you can address some of those common fears, either specific to your company or specific to that individual, even?
Yeah. I think probably the two big nuggets for like how to convey people first
Yeah.
are focusing on education and upskilling. And I specifically mean education and not training, right? So let's
Mm,
not get lost in how to use the tools. That tool is going to change next week. But the education around how to think about leveraging AI, the governance of that, like really core foundational things to this shift. Um, so upskilling, not replacing. And then the second one is ethics, because that is truly at the heart of how this will work or not work in your business and how your employees and your customers will experience it. And so hopefully everyone on this call is already committed to ethical business and behavior in general. I think it'd be really tough to sell ethical AI if not. Um, but that is more kind of how any company value or commitment gets embedded, right? So how is your leadership modeling that responsibility? How are expectations around that created and communicated? What accountability looks like? Even how successes are celebrated and the stories you're telling there. So ethical AI is really trust in the action. And when employees see that it's used transparently and fairly, it reinforces that the company is people first and tech second.
Yeah. Yeah. I love those two call outs. And I want to dive more into the AI readiness kind of action plan. We're going to touch on that here in a little bit. But before we do, just circling back to building an AI ready brand, and getting a little, we I feel like we've been practical, but really diving in here for our audience, because I know we've got a wide range of HR team of one, HR team of 50,
Sure.
US based, global. Um, let's dive in here a little bit. Where should a company start in building and communicating its AI readiness?
Sure.
Loaded question.
No, right? I want to scream just like, just start.
Yeah.
But I think, we've talked about starting with your why. That is really step one. It has to be authentic. You have to understand, and your employees have to understand, your leadership has to understand, your board, everyone needs to understand like why for your
Yeah.
for your AI strategy. So I'd say that is step one. And then understand where your current employees are at, right? Because again, that story is what is getting told externally.
Mhm.
Even if it's not the story your TAT might be putting out there. So that's kind of a one and a two. Um, but after that, I would say put yourself in your candidate's shoes and what your job seekers are doing. So go on ChatGPT and ask, what is it like to work at my company? And you can learn a lot that way. And before this call, I was actually playing with it. Maybe I will build an employer brand GPT and send it out in the
Oh
resource.
yeah.
But ask those questions, pretend you're a candidate and see kind of what comes back. And I've done it two different ways, kind of one with all my HR language, employer brand, right? And
Yeah.
then one just literally like, what is it like to work there? Because you're gonna have the full spectrum. Um, but yeah, put yourself in your target audience's shoes and kind of like go through the same motions that they are, and that will at
Yeah.
least give you you'll just understand kind of like the market that you're playing in, right? And
Yeah.
you can build from there.
Yeah. I love that idea. I'm definitely gonna play with that a little bit today. No, I think that's great insight. And I guess kind of on that, right? So that is to start. But then when we talk about a lot of our attendees here are probably using AI, they've got team members or departments using AI internally, but not necessarily talking about it or getting it out there, right, externally. So, how can HR leaders start identifying those stories and communicating those externally to continue to build that AI ready brand that candidates and employees would see as well?
Sure. Um, Highly dependent on on what you're trying to achieve, right? That's probably
Yeah,
like my asterisk for everything
I
on
love
this
it.
call. But I will riff on a few ideas, but
Okay.
please like jump in the chat if you have stories that have been really compelling in your company or that you've seen other great companies do. Like, let's get
Yeah.
it going. Let's hear. But just to riff for a minute, I think um, you go back to your AI strategy. Let's say that story is about efficiency for you right now in your business. That story tends to be less inspiring by itself, even possibly unnerving. But if you tell it not just about time saved or money saved, but why efficiency matters, right? Like surely there is a deeper business
Yeah.
reason that you are doing that, and telling that story probably has more to it that you can use to inspire folks or to kind of like tie them to the bigger mission. But maybe your why is more about innovation. And I'll give a great example. I was at the Transform conference earlier this year. It's an incredible conference. If y'all haven't been, go sign up right now. And one of the keynotes was from Lenovo, and they played a beautiful video. It's online. We can send it in the recap
Love it.
about how their technology is helping people with ALS create avatars to be able to read stories to their kids long after their physical voice no longer allows them to. And I mean, I had a moment like choking back tears where I was like, how do I go work for that company? Lenovo was like not otherwise on my radar as a
Mm,
company of interest, right? But
yeah.
that story got me. I think got a lot of other people in the audience. So, um, if you have stories internally, but also what your product is doing, like that can be a really compelling story. I think on the candidate side, um, again, you have to know your market to understand what stories are going to work. So if you're going on a go-to-market hiring spree, and a lot of those use cases about AEs being better prepared and having more productive calls and like the incredible value that AI can bring to the GTM cycle, that is very different than if you are really trying to find next level engineering talent and 80% of your engineering team is already using Cursor, and like that's the story you want to tell. So it depends kind of what you're hiring for. And for current employees, I think something we learned in our AI survey at Asana, but that I have found really common everywhere, is that the most common pushback is that folks feel like they have just no time to experiment, right? We're all trying to do
Mhm.
more with less. And so finding a story where AI failed, someone had to change the approach, and they made the time to do that, like for the greater good, share that story at an all hands, right? Like that's incredible. So those are a couple of ideas, and then probably maybe one of the most magical options could be that, we've all heard the promise that AI will automate our routine administrative tasks and we're all going to have so much time for creativity and strategy. Um, Great. So find an example of that promise coming to fruition within your company, right?
Yeah.
And someone who has been able to do more creative and strategic things as a result of how they've used AI in their job. That gold stars for that one.
Yeah, 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 no kidding. I love all those different examples, opportunities for all of us to find those stories and just connecting it back to the why first and then kind of identifying and you touched on it there of current employees maybe not having enough time to experiment. And I see Marty asked a question actually in the chat on how to start AI training. And I'm assuming Marty for current employees or current team members, but LA, before we talk about some real life examples that you've seen on how a company, doing a great job communicating their AI readiness. Any thoughts on how to start with AI training or education internally?
Yes, Marty, I'm going to give you a one-liner because this could be a whole episode in itself.
Good. I was like, that's a big question.
Um, but honestly, at Asana, we started with like homegrown enthusiasm, right? You have people in your company who are doing this, who are excited about it, who can help evangelize with others, who are using their free time to figure it out. Find those champions, give them space to breathe, give them access. And those folks honestly helped create all of our first curriculum for like our first growth con focused on our annual learning conference that was focused on AI learning. So a lot of that was homegrown. In the
Yeah.
past year, so much AI training content has come out. A lot of that is free. Again, Section AI is one resource, but there are tons. So, like you might consider skill development for managers or any other area of your company, what are you going to build? What are you going to buy? What are you going to borrow? Um, and yeah, but don't ignore what you have inside. Chances are like you have some golden nuggets to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Marty, great question. And possibly a part two episode. We'll have to talk about that because that, yeah, we could go on for a while. Um, Ellie, I know we have a couple examples of companies that have used or done a great job kind of communicating their AI readiness. So, if you could maybe just share a little bit about those organizations and why their approach was so effective.
Yeah. I chose just two quick examples because they're very achievable
Yeah.
ones, right? Like you can do this. So starting with Anthropic, no surprise. But on their website, public to everyone, they have great candidate guidance on how to use AI. So they detail exactly what they expect, what they don't expect AI to be used for by candidates. They offer suggested prompts as you're researching the company, and they offer this framework and encourage other companies to use it. So very easy to take something like that, work with your own team, and put out your own version for it. And many companies have done that. I like that this one is public to all. Um, and then the second one is Instacart, something I like that they did. So this is a screenshot of what is in the calendar invite for interviews.
Hmm.
And I want us all to take a look at this language because it's very intentional. So at Instacart, we use BrightHire to record our interviews. Great. You know what tool they're using? That link actually takes you to BrightHire's website that details everything the tool does and doesn't do. So if you have concerns about what decisions it is or isn't making or how it's being used, you are connected right there to that
Yeah.
transparently. They say why they're doing it, right? So to help folks have more engaging conversation, less note taking by the interviewers. You can opt out, which is obviously very important. They're very clear that that does not impact your candidacy. So you're already, you're helping meet employees' potential fears that they might have. And then they also set some boundaries, right? So we cannot provide access to the transcripts. Then they go even farther and say, hey, this is just one of the many ways we do this. And they link to a blog article that has stories from individual employees on how they are using AI internally. So they built an internal tool, I think in 2023, called Ava. And this links directly to an interview with I think 4 or 5 different employees where they're asking questions of them like, what outcomes has your team achieved? What have you learned along the way? And that is like right in candidates' hands at the moment that it matters. Very compelling and authentic. And honestly, impressive that it was done as early kind of in this era as it was. And you're just really able to get a sense of, okay, this company gets it. And
Yeah.
you too can do that. You can put up a blog post and tell those stories.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I would imagine some employees would just love that opportunity to tell their
Ah,
experience, their
absolutely.
story.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That is great. Two really great examples, which leads us to kind of our final topic. We've got about 7, 8 minutes left. So, talking about our AI readiness action plan. So, LA, how should our HR leaders, our audience here allocate, I mean, resources? We're talking budget, right? Time, um, all the resources to this transformation, let's say, especially just given where we're at right now economically, there's a lot of uncertainty, globally. So, any thoughts?
So many.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, budget and resources go to the highest priorities and places for impact. Ideally, right? Like hopefully our companies have that kind of discipline. So first you have to figure out where is AI on that spectrum for you as an HR team, but also your business, your company leadership. And at Asana, we really had the benefit of last year we had a company level goal. We have eight company objectives for the year, and one of them was do great things fast and responsibly with AI. It was a play off one of our values, which was do great things fast, but do great things fast and responsibly with AI. One of our 8 company goals that every employee can see how their work ladders up to. And so our chief people officer knew that this would change every aspect of work, every part of how we collaborate, how our jobs are structured, the employee experience. And so she wanted her chief of staff on it.
Hmm.
And so resourcing isn't just time and dollars, but it's mind share, it's visibility, and it was her conviction and commitment, and then gratefully her confidence in me is how I ended up being the person to share that counsel. But I was not an expert in AI, so don't think that you have to like run out and find and pay for the expertise. Honestly, few people were experts at the time, but things that I was an influencer with our company's executive leadership team and had good relationships and trust. I was a seasoned program manager, so I already had that track record of delivering strategy, ops, and impact across large, ambiguous projects.
Mm,
And I was a galvanizer of employees, so I could inspire them to try new things and connect them with why it matters. And I share all of this because a lot of HR execs like still aren't sure where to start or who is the person. I would say start with the strengths that you have.
mm,
And if I were to go back and do it again, I would have staffed it with a full-time employee. Because
mm,
if you think about it, those other seven company goals all had dedicated FTEs on them, right? They were big business goals. And I think this one we thought more of probably an analogy is like how we thought about the early days of DEI, where it was like, oh, it's everyone's responsibility. So we don't need a head of DEI. We're all going to do it. Well, it turns out if it's
yeah.
not measured, it's not managed, there's no person looking out for it, accountable, tying together those efforts across the company. And so
Wow.
similarly, I would have staffed a dedicated like AI adoption program manager, for example, and that is more common now. So I actually saw Notion recently posted an AI adoption program manager. So I think teams are definitely probably have learned that same lesson and are
Yeah.
now dedicating headcount to that the same way you would any other massive company-wide priority, right? Like you have to think about it with that same gravity.
Yeah. Yeah. That I think is great advice. And you touched on something briefly, and I'm gonna ask we dive in a little bit deeper in terms of measuring success. Any tips for our audience on that?
This is a question we get so much with
Yeah.
the group that I do some consulting work um, with Apply AI. Everyone wants to know how to measure it.
Yeah.
And we try to turn the conversation to think about like how you measure the success of any initiative, right? You're not doing AI for AI's sake,
Hmm.
and you're doing it to move other business goals forward. And so this is just another tool to help you reach those business goals. And so
Hmm.
we try to reframe it a little bit because sure, there are tons of ways, you could look at the dashboard for your enterprise tools and see who's hitting their token limits, right? Who's using it the most, things like that.
Yeah.
Sure, and that information is interesting, but it at the end of the day, this is a tool in service of a bigger outcome. And so we try to help folks stay focused on what is the bigger outcome, and then how effective is this amongst your full tool stack of helping you get there.
Right. Absolutely. I was like, as soon as I asked that, I'm like, you probably get that question a lot, but I'm sure
It's a
some of
common,
our audience was
it's
thinking
very
that
nuanced.
too.
There
Yes.
there are lots of things that you can measure. Again, that itself could probably be its a whole own thing, but from like a
Yeah.
higher level perspective, we try to
Yeah.
try to pull it up. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, LA, we are just about at time. So I want to give our audience enough time to connect with you on LinkedIn. LA's LinkedIn is there. There's also the QR code to the HR at the Table LinkedIn group in the bottom left corner. Um, LA, if you were to, kind of looking back in your career, what's one piece of advice you would give to anyone in our audience who wants to be a strategic driver of their company's AI vision and the direction they're going?
It's a very strategic question with
Yeah.
a wildly tactical answer.
Mm,
Because I'm going to say you have to roll up your sleeves and get in there too. I
right.
think this is different than other things that we go through where you can hire people way smarter than you on your team and then just create the conditions for them to succeed. I think it is very hard to drive this car if you don't know how a car works.
Yeah.
And so the leaders that I see at creating the most change successfully and are really like gaining that credibility are the ones who are sharing their use cases, in their team meetings. They are in their company Slack channels, asking questions about how things work, trying things. And so they are the living embodiment of that change that they want to see, that they expect to see, and
Yeah.
that they're holding the rest of the company accountable for. I saw one article the other day that suggested folks spend 8 hours a week on learning right now, which
Wow.
is wild to me. And that would be amazing, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
it depends how big a priority it is for your company and on what kind of timeline. And
Mhm.
are you creating the space for your employees to do that? But I think leaders have to walk the walk a little bit differently on this than on some other things we've been responsible for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love a simple answer of rolling up your sleeves. We can start there and then get our hands in and see where it takes us. But Lisa Ann, just thank you so much for your time today. I know we're right at the top of the hour, but thank you for all of your insight and just chatting for an hour and sharing your experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Really enjoyed it. Really appreciate
Yeah.
the opportunity. And we will follow up with some resources.
Yes.
If not through Verified First, feel free to find me on LinkedIn, follow along. I'll share out some things as well. And just really appreciate you all being here. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And everyone, if you have just another minute, we've got a survey. I'm going to first share. So we've got iSIMS, our sponsor for today, their contact information. And then right here, your Sherman HRCI credit. If you have just a minute here and in 30 seconds, a survey is going to pop up. Give us some feedback. Let us know what you want us to talk about on our next HR the Table episodes. And let us know if
Measure
you want to.
success.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, it all comes
Yes.
full circle.
Are we reaching
Um,
our goal? Please tell
yes, yes. And if you want a part two or part three, if there's a part of, topic that we didn't dive in deep enough, because we only have 60 minutes, let
I
us
know there
know.
were so many things we
I
didn't
know.
get to. We could
I
go.
know. I know. So we might have to have a part two for sure. But thank you, everyone. And yeah, we just hope you all have a great rest of your week. Thanks
Yes.
again, LA.
Thank you.
Bye.